Welcome to another edition of the Red Zone podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Poindexter, and Labor Day has come and gone, and it didn't really have a big effect on the tiers. Now, there was only 3 games, but only one team moved in the tiers, and we'll get to that. But let's start at the bottom, as we always do, and we start with the Montreal Alouettes. And I said upset brewing question mark because Montreal, as I said last week, they probably won't be the worst team in the league when it's all said and done because with Davis Alexander, they're a completely different team than without him. And over the last couple weeks with James Morgan and a bunch of injuries on that receiving core, yeah, they're probably the worst team in the league right now. But that could change as soon as this weekend when they face the Hamilton Tiger Cats and they're getting reinforcements back in the lineup. Maybe Tyson Philpott and Austin Mack, they could possibly be returning. So that's big time for Montreal. And it could make the top of the East Division interesting once again. Montreal is just they keep pace with Hamilton when probably Hamilton should have won that game this past weekend against the Toronto Argonauts. But for Montreal, if they can, get back to first in the East Division and then Davis Alexander returns, that could be huge for Montreal. But we'll see what they can do against the Hamilton Tiger Cats at home as well. So you really got an opportunity there. We'll see what happens. Moving to the next tier, we have the Edmonton Elks and the Ottawa Red Blacks. And I said fighting for a split. Edmonton, the only team to move in this week's tiers, and they moved down. Look, they had their chances in this game on Labor Day Monday. It was close right up to halftime. Their defense was playing well, but kind of a momentum shift was right before the half where they were driving, had to settle for a field goal in which they missed it. It was a rouge, but okay, bad enough. You go into the locker rooms only down 10-4, but then a pass interference call on Edmonton on the ensuing possession put Calgary in field goal range, and Paredes, he made the field goal, now making it a 2 possession ball game at the half. So it was 13-4 instead of 10-6 or 10-4. So look, it's rough enough. And then later in the game, you had the punt return by Eric Brooks. I think it was like 87 yards. That really took the life out of Edmonton, and they could never rebound after that. And you talk about that offensive line for Edmonton, man, oh man, was it bad. Calgary's defensive front there was getting after Cody Fajardo. They only ended with 4 sacks, but it could have been a lot more. Because he ran kind of outside the pocket and got maybe a yard or so, but there was a lot of hits on Cody Fajardo during this game. Let's hope they come out with a better performance in the Labor Day rematch. But man, coming off a 3-game winning streak and then you kind of lay an egg like that isn't good. So yeah, let's hope they can split this series against the Stampeders. And then for Ottawa, well, they're coming off of a bye week, so not much to talk about there. I think Dustin Crum is getting the start in this huge, critical back-to-back against the Lions. The next tier, we have applying pressure. We got the Toronto Argonauts and the BC Lions, and don't look now, but the Toronto Argonauts may just be back into a playoff spot, back into a playoff picture. Not yet, but they've been playing really good football over the past couple weeks. I've been talking about Nick Arbuckle and him probably playing the best football of his career. And in this last game, I mean, this is the CFL for you. It was Hamilton, Toronto, and Bo Levi Mitchell late in the game, going down the field, game-winning drive possibly, got the touchdown, did not get the 2-point conversion, so it stayed a 1-point game, but Hamilton led. And then 12 seconds, Nick Arbuckle pulled out the Mahomes, the 13 seconds, you know what I'm talking about. Sorry, Bills fans. But the 12 seconds left in the game, Nick Arbuckle throws a pass caught by Dejon Brissett. I think it was over two defenders, ran down the sidelines. It was almost kind of costly because, time was running out. It's like, get down, get down, get out of bounds, get down. He luckily stepped out of bounds before diving into the end zone trying to get the touchdown. Very, very lucky there. And Toronto went on to win the game with 1 second left. And Liram Hiralahu won the game. So, what a game that was on Labor Day Monday. And that is the definition of the CFL games coming down to the wire. It's never over until it's over. With how the time works there in the last 3 minutes, man, it was an awesome game to watch. And Toronto now on a 2-game winning streak, sitting at 4-8. Man, they could possibly make their way back into a playoff spot, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the next couple weeks and if they can keep this up. And then for the Lions, they too come off a bye like the Montreal Alouettes and the Ottawa Red Blacks, and they'll face the Ottawa Red Blacks in this back-to-back. As I said, a big matchup there because that could decide a lot of things after this. If Ottawa will still be in, playoff contention, is it over? BC holding on to the crossover spot or maybe moving up with the Winnipeg loss, which we'll get to. Really a lot of scenarios to figure out after this back-to-back, but a very, very crucial one for both BC and the Ottawa Red Blacks. Moving up to the next tier. That one stings. Yep, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Winnipeg, just a heartbreaker. They were down by, I think, 2 scores. I thought the game, it's over. But the CFL, the game is never over. Winnipeg kind of comes back and they get the touchdown, need a 2-point conversion to tie it. They didn't get it, actually got pick 6, no, pick 2, I don't know, whatever you call that. Return for the 2 points, and Saskatchewan won that game. Mosaic Stadium was loud. I mean, that's one of the loudest even on TV, it was super, super loud. So shout out to those fans making it very loud. But Saskatchewan gets the first game in that rivalry there. Winnipeg will play the Banjo Bowl in their house. Sold out, of course. Winnipeg has a chance to go for a sellout the entire season. Sell out the entire season of home games, which is really impressive. We'll see if they can do that. I think they got 2 more October games left. I wouldn't see why not. And then the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I went over it. The game-winning drive, the supposed to be game-winning drive, but all for naught as Nick Arbuckle, got the game-winning drive there. Almost did not, but luckily Dejon Brissett stepped out of bounds. So Hamilton, they're on a 2-game losing streak. They were like 6-3, like on a 6-game winning streak. Now, 2 games lost in a row, dropping to 6-5. We'll see if they can rebound next week against the Montreal Alouettes. The next tier, we have the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and I put too close for comfort. Yeah, it was probably way, way too close for comfort because they were up, again, 2 scores, and they let Winnipeg kind of back in the game. And, it's tough to close out a game in the CFL. There's so much time, and time stops after you go down and all that. And the Trevor Harris punt, that was kind of cool, where he punted it. I thought it was just, 1 point, but they called it initially a safety, and then reviewed the play, and it was ruled a rouge. So, I thought that was just a cool play. But Saskatchewan wins that game. They still remain first in the West, but you have to watch out with this team, the second place team, the Calgary Stampeders, who take the top spot in the tiers despite being second in their own division to Saskatchewan. But they have that season series. They swept the season series against the Riders. And the Calgary Stampeders finding new ways to win. Yeah, they against Edmonton, VA struggled for the most part, only having 160 somewhat yards and 13 for 23 passing. It wasn't really that good of a game for him. But that defense came alive. The special teams came alive with the Eric Brooks punt return touchdown, and they found a way to win that game by 21 points. That's scary when VA is not like on his game or like that 300 yard, 250 plus yards, and you still win the game by that much against no pushover in the Edmonton Elks because they came in off a 3 game winning streak. Yes, I know against Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal, but now Toronto is like on fire right now. So, hey, you face who you face, and they won those games. But Calgary was just, dominant. That defensive line, 4 sacks, as I talked about, really, really good. So that was good to see. And they finish off at the top of the tiers once again. We'll see what happens when they face the Elks again on Saturday. But that will do it for this edition of CFL Tiers. Now let's get into my week 14 predictions, starting off with BC and the Ottawa Red Blacks. I'm going to choose BC to win that one. The Tiger Cats and the Alouettes give me Hamilton. The Rough Riders and Blue Bombers, I'm going to choose the Blue Bombers to get their revenge. And then the Stamps at Elks give me Calgary to win there. So those are my predictions. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.